I will talk a bit about security of Web3 applications, but this will be not a really hardcore talk. This is more of a light talk, like for some high-level topics. I understand that a lot of people here with different background, like some developers, some investors. So I hope everyone will enjoy my talk. And let's start. So what will I talk about? I will talk about myself, how I got on Fantom, how I built the first product on Fantom, and what my projects are, which are Zoocoin and Ovary.io. And then we will talk a bit about vulnerabilities affecting Web3 applications and how to actually secure your application. So I will also talk about some best practices which developers should follow to avoid some negative consequences. And let's start with me. I am Ivan Rumak. I was working as a senior security engineer. And so I was really into the security. I was finding vulnerabilities. I helped to fix vulnerabilities and preventing some attacks. Now I'm also a developer and a Fantom maximalist, as I think everyone here are, and also a founder of Zoocoin and Ovary.io. My hacking career was actually pretty large. I was hacking for 3 or 4 years. I was hacking on HackerOne platform, where I found more than 300 vulnerabilities among all kind of companies, actually, like Shopify, like Google, which is actually out of HackerOne scope, but actually a lot of big names I found vulnerabilities for. But HackerOne is not the only one platform. I also was hacking on Backrot, where I found around 100 vulnerabilities. And besides finding vulnerabilities manually, I was also automating some scenarios. For example, if I know how to find vulnerability, what can I do to make the machine find it for me? So I was writing some custom scanners, some scanner models, and I also submitted 100 scanner models idea to Detectify company. So, and then I was starting to look at Binance Exchange. I really wanted to know I really want to know more about cryptocurrencies, the blockchain, because I was interested in learning about solidity securities, like smart contract security. And this is how I got on Binance, to just touch the things around, to experience it myself. And first, I did a very small volume trading. Like, I bought some Dogecoin, some DOT, some ADA, like some other stuff, and just to touch the things around. And I thought, why don't we automate the process? We can actually write some bot that will be using technical analysis to actually to trade for me. And I have written such bot. It was working actually pretty good. So what I did underneath is it looked at the current price, it looked at the metrics, it looked at some indicators like EMA, like RSI, like Bollinger Bands, some other thing. And basically, I was writing the logic above it. So for example, if the price is above EMA 50 and the RSI is oversold, then you do a trade. So, and that was a very funny experience. I really liked it a lot. And writing such bot required me to do a constant research on what tokens are there. So I was constantly browsing CoinMarketCap and looking for the most volatile tokens to include that into my bot, so I could get more profits. And this is how I found Fantom. So back then, Fantom was very, very small token. It was priced like maybe 3 cents or 5 cents. So I bought in, and I just started to look at the ecosystem, just because I found that pretty interesting to look at. And what I noticed is the ecosystem, unlike Ethereum, back there was actually very, very small. So there were only a few apps, like there were actually only SushiSwap and PVA wallet functionalities. So there was nothing you could do on Fantom besides staking your Fantoms and actually using SushiSwap for whatever reason, because there were no tokens to trade. But then my bot was working. I was looking at Fantom. I kept an eye on it. And I've noticed that actually the first ERC20 tokens started to deploy on Fantom. The first token was Bomb, and there were other tokens. And this is how I thought I found the problem. There was no actually trading infrastructure on Fantom. So people were using SushiSwap to track the price. Manually, they had no charts, they had no farming, no analytic tools, no wallet that supports ERC20 tokens. So it was kind of boring. So I decided to fix that problem, especially when I had so much Fantom back then. That's how I end up with the ZooCoin, which is supposed to be the fully-fledged DeFi ecosystem built exclusively on Fantom. And the first problem I solved is I provided the charts for the traders on the Fantom. And this was the first product of ZooCoin, is ZooCharts. Yeah, that's the first charting tool on Fantom, and I think the first app. It looked like this. So I've written that all by myself. I have no front-end experience. I only know the back-end, and I only know some smart contract things. So it looked pretty bad. Since then, we actually did a lot of work on it. We made real-time updated price trades. We added some liquidity events. We added some complex analytics to that to show. And we also added support of all core dexes, all core pairs. We added watch list. We added rankings, new pairs tracking, and token info. So now it looks like this. Oh, pretty. So here you have the watch list. Here you have the USD price, the market cap, the search bar, the token you want your token to be traded to, the exchange choosing, the trades, and there is the liquidity button that is not seen for some reason. It was working okay. People were satisfied. They could actually trade on Fantom and see the price of their assets to whether going down or up. But there was one more problem. There was no ERC20 wallet supporting Fantom. So people didn't know how much USD is their net worth actually. They didn't know how many tokens they hold in the wallet. They didn't know how many they are holding in liquidity. So you had to keep all these things in mind. And that's how we came up with the Zoo wallet, which was the second our product. And this is also the first ERC20 wallet on Fantom. So now it looks like this. You can see your balances. You can see how much you have in the liquidity pools among all the supported dexes. Also, you know the value in FTM, the price, the USD price, and the price in the value in USD overall. And you also have a nice net worth, which is showing your balance, just what people needed. Yeah, now it actually the Zoo wallet got created when there were no farming, no actually not so many tokens, and it became obsolete pretty quick. So because now you can do a lot more than just adding liquidity and trading the token. Now you can put it in the farm, put it in some weighted pool. You can do some lending. And this is why we have scheduled rework, which will also support some advanced farming analytics. It will support some liquidity analytics like impermanent loss tracking. And also we will add support for more protocols that are coming to Fantom. The next problem was on Fantom, there were no NFTs. There were no NFTs at all. So people could not buy NFTs, did not have a marketplace. Only they could do is to deploy custom contract like with ERC 721 compatible, and that's it. No marketplace was the issue. So this is how we came up with the idea on our third product, which is ZooPet. It is also the first NFT marketplace on Fantom. This is look like this. It's pretty simple. So basically, you can create the NFT. You can mint it with a small fee of 30 Zoo coins, and then you have some arts, Fantom like text. You have a search bar there, and pretty much it. It's simple yet effective tool that brought NFTs on Fantom. People could actually mint NFTs. They could trade it. And this is, I think, one of the reasons that Fantom started to actually exploding back then. So the next thing we did is actually we seen that a few dexes were already ported or already built on Fantom, which are the Spooky and the Spirit dexes. So we decided, why don't we have our own dex? And we can do it. Like, we can add some more info, we can add charts to the main page, and this is how we did Zoo dex. Also, it's pretty fast and responsive. We did a complete rewrite of the source code. We did a lot of changes, so it became fast and responsive. Now it looks like this. It has some, the default trading window. It has the charts, and it has also the liquidity and in the sidebar and the farming. So yeah, we have farming. So you can actually put your liquidity into the farm and farm our reward token, which is wild. Yeah, but it's not only the default DEX and default farms. It's also the first quadratic farming that got released on Fantom. What is quadratic farming is basically the more you seed in the farm, the more you harvest. So basically, we encourage you to put the liquidity to our farm, and the more you are farming, the more we are having the TVL, and the more reward you have from us. So we also have some advanced farming analytics, like this one. So basically, you can track your entry USD price. You can track the exit USD price. So you can track how many USD you have in the farm, and also how much you harvested, how much you have in USD, in tokens value. So this is pretty useful thing for tracking your farming experience, like whether you are in profits or not, to make decisions like do you want to take the liquidity away from the farm. And the next problem on Fantom was too many dexes were back there. So there were Spirit, Spooky, Zoo dex, Shiba dex, a lot of dexes. And what Fantom really needed is the dex aggregator, which finds the best price for the token you want to buy or sell. So this is how we came with the ZooTrade idea. It's also the first native Fantom dex aggregator. We wrote it from scratch, so it's completely built from zero. And this looks like this. So basically, you can enter your input token amount, and it will return you the best possible ratio using our algorithm we wrote. Yeah, so it's giving you a good trading options. It also has no fees, which means usually DEX aggregators take some fees. So even if the road was profitable, you also lose a fraction by paying the fee. So we don't have any fee. You can enjoy the best prices without any cutoffs. And what is the interesting about the ZooTrade is that all the logic is performing on front end. So usually DEX aggregators work with the backend, like 1inch or Firebird or whatever DEX aggregator you can name. But ZooTrade, I think, is the first one that uses the logic on front end. And this actually makes it a bit more decentralized, a bit more permissionless, and there are just much less room for errors. So for example, you will be constantly getting trades using the same algorithm. So yeah, that's it. And now we're actually solving another problem in Fantom, which is there is no curated NFT marketplace. And this is how we came up with the Ovre.io idea. It's premium curated NFT auction house, which will look something like this. It's already almost done, and I think we will see the release of the marketplace just after the conference. So it's the premium NFT marketplace. Also, it helps to bring authentic NFTs. Now the problem with all the NFT marketplaces on Fantom is that everyone can mint whatever they want. So you can't just be sure about the authenticity of the NFT piece. So it's like the museum where anyone can enter and just put their drawing on the wall, and this will be sold for some crazy money. So we want to fix that. We want to make NFTs authentic, and we also want to make the authenticity a cross-chain thing. So with the new AnySwap bridge for NFTs, we can actually, so what will be possible? You can mint on Fantom, and you can decide whether you want to sell on Fantom or you want to bridge your NFT to Ethereum and sell it on Ethereum. So this will be like a seamless experience. And Overio.io is built for the true collectors, for the people who believe in the decentralized future, for people that treat NFTs not like a short-term thing, but for people that think that NFTs will actually stay. And we do think the same. That's why we put a lot of efforts into this product. And we also have some cool ideas, and one of them we want to actually ship as a product. For now, the temporary name is Project Snake, and I cannot share any details, but just so you know that we have more ideas and we have some really cool stuff coming up. So let's start with the Web3 security. Let's answer the question, why security is important? I think it's pretty obvious, but let's say it again. In DeFi, in Web3, actually big money are being involved. So like millions of dollars, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, even billions in some protocols. And another thing is that the transactions are completely untraceable. Transactions are anonymous, which means the one guy who exploited the vulnerability and stole all the funds, he can actually harm no consequences. There's a possibility he will, of course, it's not working in 100% of the cases, but usually it's untraceable, and actually the person who did some exploit or stole some funds, they get no harm for that. And the future's financial system cannot be based on insecure tech. That's why we need to think about security. And also what I want to do with this talk, I want to raise awareness about the security, about, I hope a lot of developers are looking now and they will pick up some ideas from this talk. Like what can they do to check their application for whether it's vulnerable or not. And let's start with traditional applications, like Web2 applications. So what they consist of? Usually the application consists of front-end, the back-end, and infrastructure. So basically we have a front-end part, which is written in some JavaScript code. We have a back-end part, which is written in whatever language. And we have infrastructure, which is databases, proxies, configuration files, and etc. And the thing about traditional web applications is that everything is vulnerable. So you have vulnerabilities on front end, you have vulnerabilities on back end, and you have even vulnerabilities on your infrastructure. So a lot of room for errors, you basically have to hire the entire security team to keep an eye on these things. And basically, when I say that something is vulnerable, let's define what vulnerability is. Basically, vulnerability is a mistake in the code or misconfiguration that allows some malicious actions to be in place. What does it mean? Basically, anything that can be used for violating the integrity, confidentiality, and availability of the data is considered a vulnerability. So, for example, I have some medical records in the place, and if I cannot access them for some, for some hacking actions that resulted in the denial of the service from the end facility, this will be an availability problem. And if someone hacks into the database of the medical center and change some data from my, from my account, from my profile, this will be the violation of integrity. And if some third-party person gets access to my medical data, it will also harm the confidentiality of the data. So now we know what a traditional application consists of. We know that it consists of front-end, back-end, and infrastructure, and everything is vulnerable. And we also know what vulnerability is. So let's look closer and define the vulnerability types. We have actually two types of vulnerabilities on the traditional Web3 applications, which is the client side and server side. The client side is a vulnerability that affects only end user inside his browser. So what does it mean? For example, I, as a hacker, can put some magic into the website, and when you visit the website, you see some fancy actions in your browser. So which means I could hack into your browser and get your data. But the thing about this one is it only affects the end user, so no one else besides you is affected, well, unless everyone is visited the same page with exploit code. And the server-side vulnerability actually affects all the stored data across all the users, all the possible infrastructure, and everything gets exposed. So the client-side vulnerabilities are only targeting one end user, and server-side actually allows the attacker to gain access to everything else. So, and we also know that traditional web application, everything is vulnerable. So let's apply the vulnerability types to the part of the application. The front-end side is suffering from client-side vulnerabilities because front-end is JavaScript, the browser, everything is tight. The backend suffers from server-side vulnerabilities, and the infrastructure also suffers from server-side vulnerabilities. But how Web3 actually helps us with such dramatic situation where everything is vulnerable, a lot of vulnerabilities, so you need to hire a whole team? Actually, in Web3, the biggest change towards the security was that the backend and the infrastructure was replaced to the smart contracts. So you don't have to worry about the server-side vulnerabilities at all. But this also introduced another type of vulnerabilities, which is smart contract vulnerabilities. So basically, we exchanged the server-side vulnerabilities for smart contract vulnerabilities. And smart contract vulnerability obviously affecting the smart contracts. So in Web3 application, we have two parts. The front end, which suffers from client-side vulnerability, and smart contract, which suffers from smart contract vulnerabilities. What is interesting about that is the front-end part is not going anywhere. So the Web 2 and Web 3 is actually very similar in terms of front-end vulnerabilities. But let's cover the smart contract vulnerabilities real quick. Most of them are like in logic flow related. So basically all the time you're writing the smart contract, you're checking behind and checking that the flow is not the logic flow cannot be used to gain some unwanted consequences. So basically, in traditional application, you can just say like, I want to write this function like this, and this will be future me problem. But in smart contract, you also need to check the things all over the time. But there is not only enough to check the logic flow. There are also some language-based tricks like reentrancy, and so you not only need to know the algorithms, the logic, you also need to know the language really deep to avoid all kinds of pitfalls. And this is why smart contracts vulnerabilities were highlighted a lot of times. Like there are a lot of articles about that, and this is very specific. And actually, to be honest, the smart contract vulnerabilities require a dedicated talk, and this is why we will not cover this any further. We'll discard it. But what we will focus on client-side vulnerabilities, which is much funnier. So we already know that client-side vulnerabilities are exploited on the client, because client-side, and in the web, the client is the browser. So basically, you get attacked in your own browser. And then the client-side vulnerability affects only the end user who visited the vulnerable page with exploit placed. And there are a lot of different types of actually client-side vulnerabilities. So for example, we have a lot of ways to hack into your browser, if summarize. Yeah, there are a lot of different types of client-side vulnerabilities, but I will focus only on one. But yet it's the most dangerous and easiest exploitable out of all of them, which is the cross-site scripting. It's the most it's the most powerful and dangerous vulnerability in whole client-side vulnerability types, especially in Web3. So what is the cross-site scripting? The cross-site scripting is a possibility to execute arbitrary JavaScript code in the victim's browser. So like what I said, you have some browser, you are doing some things in that, and then I, as a hacker, like I interrupt your experience, and you're getting forced to execute my JavaScript code, which I told your browser to render, to execute. What is the JavaScript? JavaScript actually is the language, and in the web, it allows developers to make the web page interactive. The problem with web page is that the problem was that HTML is static, and something needed that will make the HTML alive, and JavaScript basically was chosen to make the web experience more alive. So you get some buttons, you get some logic, you get some animation, and a lot of fancy stuff that you see now in all the websites. All the websites are powered by JavaScript. And JavaScript also performs almost everything you do on website. So if you, like, for example, want to change your personal profile, if you want to upload the avatar, everything is done by JavaScript. So it's a very powerful tool. It's very powerful in the browser. It can do basically anything you can do. And if someone gets access to if someone can execute the arbitrary JavaScript in your browser, then it means that everything that application can do, also hacker can do, and get some profits from it. So we already know, we know that cross-site scripting is a possibility to execute arbitrary JavaScript code in the victim's browser. And the next thing about cross-site scripting is actually it's very widespread issue. So a lot of websites are affected, like all over the web. Basically, any site you use, there is a 95% possibility that it's vulnerable by cross-site scripting. Yet, cross-site scripting is pretty easy to find and pretty easy to exploit. But at the same time, it brings a lot of serious consequences. So it's very dangerous vulnerability, but it's easy to find. So anyone can actually try to find it, and if they succeed, they can exploit it and exploit it further. And since a lot of websites are affected due to some programming practices, so actually the web is not a very secure place, it turns out. For example, let's see how one can find cross-site scripting vulnerability. For example, we have some registration, like sign up for a profile. The website asks me to enter my first name and last name. These are the strings, and this is important because cross-site scripting only can be used when strings are being used. So there is a registration. I can enter my actual name, like Ivan Rumak, and what will be performed on the backend of the application in the traditional application. The first thing is that my name will be saved in the database, and then every time the application needs to show my name, they need to somehow retrieve that from the database. So this might be a dedicated REST API call, or this might be just basically anything else that uses the database and fetches the data from it. And then after the HTML code has my name in it, the browser actually renders the whole thing. And we can actually see the profile with my name. So we know that this profile actually was not magically just popped up on the website. It actually visited the database, and the database returned the name that I sent to it when I clicked the sign up button. So in the HTML code, this looks like this. So we have some markup tags, HTML tags, and we have my name actually in it. But why cross-site scripting is a possibility is because browser actually does not know which part of HTML code is supplied by user. The browser just renders everything that it gets. For example, what can we do? We know that everything is shown on the web, like in the browser, is a HTML page. So we know that our string we enter here will end up in some HTML code, and that's why we enter like the string and we try to put some third-party HTML code in the string. For example, here I enter Ivan, and I'm adding the tag img. So for example, this string, like the previous one, will be included in the database. But the only difference is that this string contains something that looks like HTML code and which should be rendered by browser as HTML code. And then actually the flow looks exactly the same. So the HTML template calls the database, or there is a REST API call. But in the end, the HTML page that got assembled from all these calls is getting inserted into the user's browser and being rendered. For example, the browser cannot see the difference between the user-supplied string and the HTML string, and he basically renders this because there is no way to tell him that do not render this user-supplied string. And that's why we can see that Ivan Rumak actually has some broken images near it, which means we can as a user, insert some third-party arbitrary HTML code in the original page, and we can manipulate the page content, and basically we can invoke JavaScript from it. The only difference we need to do is we need to change the img tag to script tag. And everyone that come to my profile will see will actually execute my JavaScript I want him to execute. For example, I want to steal all the data, or I want to delete the profile. Everything is possible if he visits my page with the exploit code. In the Web 2, exploiting cross-site scripting actually can only harm can actually do a lot of things, but it's not the direct loss of money or direct loss of whatever, because the exploitation of cross-site scripting in Web 2 can only give you some private data leak, for example, give me some secure API keys of the profile, or actually, if you visit my page with exploit code, I can force your browser to perform some action. For example, change the name. So for example, you use the Twitter, you visit my page, and your name gets changed on your behalf, on victim's behalf. But it's getting even worse with the third-party browser extensions connected to the website. I had an experience where the website used some plugin for signing the data, like there was some electronic signature, and I found the cross-site scripting issue, and it turned out that this cross-site scripting issue can be elevated into the remote code execution. So basically, I could save some local file on the computer of the victim because of the possibilities that browser extension gave me. And talking about browser extensions, we have MetaMask. What is the MetaMask? MetaMask is the extension-based crypto wallet, which is being invoked and controlled by JavaScript on the page. But in order to use the MetaMask, you need to connect it first, and each sensitive action performed in MetaMask, like sign a transaction or do a signature. Basically, everything that can bring some serious consequences being approved by end user. But we know that MetaMask being invoked by JavaScript, and we already know that there is a cross-site scripting vulnerability that allows us to execute any JavaScript in the victim's browser. So, and if we take another look on the flow of from the hacker enters the string, and this string is actually executing the code in the victim's browser, we can apply this from the Web 2 to Web 3 with this. So the database being replaced with smart contract, and this smart contract might have some function to save the arbitrary string from the user. For example, user can save some string with HTML code in it, And then smart contracts have implemented some function that returns the string. And then the application actually calls this function, gets the string, and puts it into the HTML page. So basically pretty much the same thing, but the smart contract is being used instead of database. And since we know that there are a lot of money in crypto, so the consequences are actually a bit different. And each cross-site scripting on the website that has MetaMask connected to it can actually lead to the funds lost. And this is actually already beats every possible consequence. So the demo, yeah. Sorry. Also, we already should know about some cases. For example, the most recent cross-site scripting attack was in SushiSwap Miso application. So they did basically the same thing. They had some smart contract call that returned some user-supplied string, and some user entered some HTML code, and this HTML code were supposing to change the contract address, which all the users interact with. So in the Miso, all the users got sent the funds to the manipulated contract, and actually the person got some like $3 million from it, and actually got successfully away with it. But I want to show the demo I found by myself. So what I did, I just wanted to explore like the Fantom ecosystem, whether applications are suffering from cross-site scripting or not. So for this purpose, I created ERC20 contract with exploit code in the string variable. So if we can see here, when we actually build a smart contract, ERC20 smart contract, we can enter the name and the symbol of the token. And then we actually use some DEXs, we use some wallets, we use charts, we use other applications, and a lot of places where this symbol and this name actually being reflected to us. So I thought, why don't we do some stress testing to the ecosystem? So I deployed this contract, and I started to look what happens. Like I went to some DEXs, I went to the wallet, I did some transactions, and I accidentally broke the Explorer we have, yeah. So for example, I had some IMG tag in the symbol field, and this is actually the Explorer. So I had some tokens, and the Explorer is showing my token balance. So for example, I had some tokens, and Explorer showed me that I have 1,233 of some HTML code tokens. But the thing is, it got rendered. So if we see the image, it means that we can also insert some script tag and actually run the JavaScript code inside everyone who visits the Explorer page, and his balance is not his balance contains this token. So this is a pretty serious thing, and it gets, yeah, you can see that here. And it gets even more serious, especially the Explorer has the connect to Web3 button. So for example, if anyone used the connect to Web3 anytime prior and he has MetaMask connected, and he visits his profile page, and I send him, I airdrop some tokens to him, he will execute this code, and since he has MetaMask connected, I can actually invoke his MetaMask and get some profits from it, at least try to. Yep. So, but what to do? What do we do about the cross-site scripting vulnerability? Actually, the most noticeable thing I had in my experience of browsing the Fantom ecosystem is that almost everything is written in React. And this is actually good. Not any company can say we built everything in React. But if you use React, actually you're pretty much safe if you don't do some clear mistakes, because JSX is actually securing your output in the foolproof way. For example, you can actually put the string from the ERC20 token name to the page, and it will get rendered safely because the JSX takes care of it. You don't even know what cross-site scripting is, but you're getting lucky because JSX do it for you. So basically, the first thing is use the React for your front end. And actually, the second thing we can all do is we can learn more about cross-site scripting issues we can actually learn more about other client-side issues, and we can raise awareness about that. So that's it. My final thoughts about the security of Web3 is actually what we are going to see in the next maybe couple of years is that a lot of big projects will jump on the Web3 technology. They will use smart contracts instead of their application traditional backend, and this will bring a lot of these people will need help because this is clearly not an easy task to migrate your Web2 infrastructure to Web3, and a lot of mistakes need to be clarified, need to be publicly known. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So maybe any questions? Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Wonderful, wonderful presentation. Really loved it.
Thank you.
Security is paramount, and you have really shown us why. So firstly, from the community side, I really need to thank you. We love your DEX. It's an amazing tool and much needed. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So regarding the DEX, actually, I had a couple of questions. So I've been using the aggregator a long time. And as you may know, there are a couple of more aggregators now being launched on Fantom. So there's this peculiar fact which I noticed maybe you can elaborate. Most of these DEXs, they list assets directly. Whereas for ZooCoin or ZooDex, we have to contact the team and take a longer route. So how would that work? How can I get my asset listed if I create a new coin?
Yeah, I got it. Yes, we're having some hard-coded list of the tokens, and this actually was made, I think, because we have some internal talks, and we wanted to make the zoo trade more of a premium thing for the selected tokens rather than for basically anything. Also, the DEX aggregators works really bad with the taxed tokens. So we need to actually, we cannot let any token being traded on our aggregator because the taxed token will actually might cause some internal logic mistakes due to the fact that it's taxed on each transaction. So we did it for the integrity and for the security and for everything. We just want to ensure that everything works perfectly and there is no mistakes due to taxed tokens. That's why there is a fixed thing.
I understand that, but I think the question here is two-sided. So firstly, when token assets are added, you mentioned that these are premium features. So that's not a tax token. Is there an aggregator for the masses, for the public, which they can use?
I think at some point we can actually make ZooTrade to accept all the tokens. So we just need to test it first. And yeah, as you said, there are plenty of aggregators. At some point, ZooTrade will be enhanced. We actually did write our own algorithm for that. So we are supporting the DEXs, we are supporting the curve-based pools, and there will be more pools available soon, and perhaps the thing you're asking for.
Thank you. So from what I understand, initially the aggregator had a lot more assets listed, but then they got delisted, and now I'm not sure why the delisting part was there. I understand if it's a premium feature and there's some certain conditions they need to get listed, but it just went the other way around. For example, the largest NFT game currently being built on Fantom, Farm God DAO, they had most of the assets listed on your DEX, but then once they got delisted, they had to move to Spirit Swap and other exchanges because their community was left in the dark very randomly. So I guess you may understand the confusion
yeah, I cannot comment that right now, sorry, because I didn't understand. If you come after the speech, we can actually sort everything out.
Yeah. Of course.
Because I need to know the context. I don't know
just delisting of assets. Aggregator had a ton more of assets listed and they got delisted very randomly, out of the blue. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
I've got a question as well. Because of the NFT marketplace, do NFTs allow as well customized parameters? For example, I have an NFT and then I would add the city, the country to it, a description, and then search for these parameters as well? For example, on OpenSea, you can do that you can add customized parameters.
Yeah. When we built Zoopet, there were no NFTs at all on Fantom, so we didn't know how much of a popularity will be generative NFTs getting. So we did it pretty simple. It only has some like ERC 721 standard. When you create NFT, you can only specify the image, the name, the description, and we do not support anything else. This is pretty robust, but yet this is still pretty good working tool. And regarding attributes, we don't have that, but this would be a cool thing to support, I guess.
And so when I transfer that NFT from Fantom to Ethereum, I could sell it on OpenSea.
I think, yes, you will be able to do that. And you even will get royalty if you do that. Yeah, we're speaking about Ovary.io, I just realized. So yeah, you will be able to mint NFT on Fantom, and you will have a choice whether you want to sell it on Fantom or you want to bridge it to Ethereum and sell it there. Like, this will be a really seamless experience. So for example, you will be able to bridge, you will be able to sell on our marketplace, and you will be able to sell basically on every marketplace that supports our NFTs. Yeah, like on OpenSea if they decide to support us.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from the audience? There's one down the front here, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation. Interesting. The question about Zoo and the token as well, is there any plans to create the governance framework around the project?
We have some, some basic governance things, like we have snapshot subdomain, which can be used to do some proposals, and then people with Zoo coins will actually vote for these proposals, whether they want it to be implemented or not. We actually have that, but we're actually not running some governance for a while because there were no topics we can actually run governance for. So far, things are pretty straightforward, and when we will need to know the community decision about the choice, we actually will run the governance vote in the snapshot tool we already have.
So you have integration with the snapshot, right?
Yeah.
And there is actually the question, like initial question about the integration with the Zoo. Like, is there any chances in the future that if something within the Fantom community is becoming popular and they needed an integration with the Zoo, so it will be pushed somehow and implemented?
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, we can do such kind of proposals easily. You can come. Actually, we're open to any kind of suggestions. We're open to basically everything. All of you guys can just meet me after the speech and talk in person. So I think, yeah, we will work towards establishing the partnerships and integrations, and this can also be used with the snapshot tool. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for the question.